everyone, it's Horror Free For All, and I hope you're doing well today. I have here a film review of a movie that came out in 2020. It was written by Mark S. Allen, Howard Bird, and Dante Yor, and was directed by Dante Yor. And the film in question is PHarm, with a PH. So, I was out in Big Lots the other week, and I was browsing through the movie section like I always do. I love going to Big Lots every month or so to see what new movies they got in. And I saw this yellow case in this movie called PHarm for $2.99. And I was like, you know what? I read the back and it says a Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe with a bit of a Rob Zombie-ish feel. And I saw a chainsaw on the cover and I looked at the back and I'm like, oh, it's a haunted maze around Halloween. And there might be some slashing going on. Let's check it out. Well, I watched the movie. And I'm perplexed at how the fuck this movie spawned a sequel. But I can kind of guess why. Because this movie came out in 2020, during the pandemic. Everybody was at home. Everybody was streaming. I looked to see how much money this movie made in the box office. It made less than $2,000. But I'm assuming it made a shit ton of money on physical media sales, online, and streaming revenue to warrant a sequel. And there's apparently a rabid fan base that is asking for a PHarm 3. Much power to you. But good God, I have never been so bored in my life watching a movie than watching this. This movie, I honestly thought was pretty amateur, even compared to some low-budget movies that I've seen come out this year in 2024, which I haven't seen a year that is pretty much running very strong for independent horror than 2024. Just given a few years ago, when you see movies like this used to give horror films a bad name. And maybe this is a relic of a bygone era, but I really don't get the hype behind this. I looked at some reviews after watching this and seeing people give it some sort of praise and thought it was good for them. And some people even loved it and said it's one of their favorite slasher movies. Much power to you, but I just don't get it. It's a cool little gimmicky yellow case. Apparently I heard PHarm 2 is better. I might check that out on streaming, and if I like it, I might buy it. But this movie is an odd one. It's a very odd film, and yeah. Don't watch this movie unless you come across it and maybe you have some curiosity, or you see it on Tubi or something. Check it out if it fits that genre niche you're kind of looking for. But if you're looking for this game changer of a slasher movie, this ain't it. This is not it. So yeah, with that out of the way, I want to kind of briefly go over the plot synopsis without giving pretty much any spoilers away. I'm trying to get away from doing that. So yeah, I'm going to keep it very brief here. All I need to know is the film starts off with a cold open in the credits of this woman being chased in the complete nude in this corn maze by people with weapons. And they end up coming across her at the end of the path, and we see her do something very unreal to herself to kind of imply that this situation that she was in was fucked up. And after that opening title credit sequence ends, we meet the main four characters of the film. We have a brother and a sister. I remember one of the characters' names is Rustin. That's the guy's name. He's the only guy, or the only character out of the four I can really remember their name of. And the other two are a couple, a blonde girl dressed in a cheerleader outfit and this generic-looking guy. And they're about to have sex in this room, and the brother and sister come in to visit, and the mom kind of interrupts her son and his girlfriend about to get it on because the friends came over. And they're kind of shooting the shit, and we get this backstory that they're I think they're seniors in high school or freshmen in college or some bullshit. The back of the DVD says they're high school seniors, so we'll just roll with that. And they're all struggling actors, and they, want to do that, I guess, as a profession. And this Rustin guy got a small bit part, and now he might be recognized. He might be a small-time celebrity because he was in, like, a commercial or some bullshit. And while they're talking, a conversation gets brought up about this corn maze, the biggest one in the Midwest, and it's only an hour away, and it's around Halloween, and maybe they should go there to see how the actors are performing. That might be something they can look into for jobs or whatever. So the four agree to go. And when they get to the corn maze, they have to get their hand stamped to go inside, and all four proceed to get their hand stamped and have to go through the scanner of sorts. And the first three enter, but the sister of this guy Rustin is pretty much chosen as the 10,000th visitor of the corn maze that year. And because she was the 10,000th visitor, there's a stipulation that if her and her friends can make it through the entire maze within an hour or 2 hours or something like that, they can win up to $10,000. So the teens, of course, take the gamble. And when they enter the maze, they're told to go their separate ways, and they're going to try to figure out how to reach the end without the help of each other to, raise the stakes a little bit. And once they get separated, we get to see the killers come out of the woodwork, let's just say, in the corn maze. And they might not be the typical killers. I mean, you can look at the cover of this DVD and you can kind of guess what they kind of look like. They all have distinct personalities. And throughout the movie, we see each individual character interact with their own adversary, so to speak. Some of the killers might get fucked up, and we realize that there could be a community going on here with the person who runs the corn maze, so to speak, and the workers on the property, and how deep this operation runs. But let's just say we may or may not get to see a couple of these characters bite the dust in some mildly graphic ways. There's some decent gore to be had there. But there's a bombshell revelation revealed about a certain character, and these intentions that a specific person who works at the corn maze wants with this said person. And it goes a wild direction that I think the back of the DVD case completely spoils. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but we get to learn what exactly they're doing to people on this property and the main reason for that. And let's just say the motives are kind of rooted in the greater good of, how do I put this? Beauty. And I'll just leave it at that. But once the movie, I don't really think it has a real climax, because it's mostly just moments of stuff happening throughout the whole movie. And once we get that revelation, we pretty much hit the end of the film, where a certain character is kind of looking for another character in the movie and is passing out flyers for that person. And we get this fucked up, idea of what exactly has happened to a specific character. And I'll just leave it at that. So that in a nutshell is what you're going to kind of expect out of PHarm here. Now, this film, I'm going to be upfront. It's really hard for me to kind of pinpoint positives with this movie, because on the whole, this movie just feels so fucking amateur. And no offense to the people behind this movie. I guess you struck a chord with people out there, and I do appreciate some stuff here. But like I said, it's just hard to kind of find stuff to appreciate about it. But if I had anything to appreciate about it, I like the makeup effects on the killers in this movie. I like the outfits, and I like the idea and the vibe, even at points of the film, of being in the corn maze. Where you're isolated from everyone, you get lost. It's in the dark when the kids are going through it. So it adds this level of what could be lurking in the dark, what could be lurking in the shadows at points. And I think it's kind of effective on that front. The killers look intimidating. There's some really decent gore to be had here. Specifically, there's a scene involving somebody's arm that was absolutely unexpected and brutal. And the scene carried on for minutes, and it was just agonizing to watch what happened to this character. And I had to tip my hat. That was really good. There's some stuff involving skin in this movie. I'm not going to get into exactly what they're doing with the skin, because that's a huge spoiler. But that shit was gnarly to watch, and I was kind of taken aback by that, and I felt kind of queasy, given how it looked. It looked really believable. It looked like real skin. So the prosthetic work really did help sell the gore here. And honestly, the twist to this whole film, it took a while to get to there, but I actually really fucking enjoyed the twist to this movie. I thought that was kind of a cool way, especially when you're going for a more Rob Zombie-ish. I think the back of this DVD is very accurate on that, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe with this, where it's very masochistic with how it handles the main characters and how it's not always going to be, a happy ending. I thought that it was handled pretty well here and pretty effectively, and I get why I guess a sequel would follow up to this, because there's plenty of room to add on to the story, and it almost feels like you kind of need a sequel to figure out what the fuck's going to happen next, because you want to know. And I have to say that really did help save the movie for me, is that, final 25-minute stretch of it did help me a lot. And like I said, I'll probably check out the sequel movie just to figure out what the fuck happens, because I'm actually intrigued at this point, but it took long enough to get to that point. And I will say, this movie is trying to be slice of life at times with the characters and trying to write them in that Friday the 13th kind of way. I've already reviewed other films that try to do this, like Dark Ride. But however, Dark Ride did it way better than this movie. It was way more funnier than this fucking film. But there were funny moments in this movie, mainly dealing with the kid, Rustin. And that's why he's the only character I can really remember, because the shit he says in this movie sometimes is absolutely cringe, and sometimes is comedic gold. So it's hit or miss with him, but he was honestly probably my favorite character out of the bunch, other than the sister character, who the film does spend a lot of time with as well. And we get to find out what happens to her in the film. And she was pretty well acted. I think the girl who plays her was Tiana Tuttle. I looked at her IMDb page. She doesn't have hardly anything to her screen filmography, which is kind of sad, because she was really good. And honestly, the guy who played Rustin, I think his name is Chris Leary, if he had a better script, I think he could be in a pretty decent horror film other than this. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind checking them out in other movies if I see them, on the bill. And yeah, I mean, some sound positives with it. I do think that the guy who runs the corn maze as well, I really dig his character. He's very unorthodox, and that kind of ties into this relationship that we get to see from these workers at this place. It feels so kind of new, which I think this film honestly brings that element, at least, from people saying that this movie freshens up this genre or whatever. If we're talking about that specific relationship that we actually get to see a bit fleshed out in the movie at times, sure, I thought that was pretty neat to see. You see a bit of a camaraderie with the villains, which is unorthodox, but weirdly cool. But other than those things, I have a lot of problems with this movie. The writing in this movie, in terms of dialogue, is fucking atrocious. I'm sorry. The character writing, they're all bland characters. Minus the ones that get the most focus, like Rustin and his sister. Everybody else fucking sucks in this movie. Maybe minus the carnival runner and this one chick that's, I guess, part of the gang at the, not the carnival, but the corn maze. All these characters are forgettable shit. And like I said, the bad dialogue, I mean, good God. You have just really cheesy conversations going on with these characters early on to kind of establish their friendship. And their friendship is pretty much hell-bent on them interacting in the first half of the movie. And they don't even feel like fucking friends. You know what I mean? And it's not in that realistic way. This is the thing about low-budget horror films for me. If it's going to be character-driven, at least make it realistic, at least make it fun. I've seen really great low-budget horror films recently with realistic characters and how they are portrayed on screen. This is not one of those movies. And yeah, it is what it is. The movie does take a while to get to its promise, I guess, of killing. Really low body count for a movie centered around a fucking humongous corn maze that I think they said takes place over in 100 acres of fucking land. You mean to tell me that they're the only people getting killed up in the movie? I get the setup and how they were pretty much chosen for this, I guess. But the movie needed a little more spice to it. And honestly, going back to what I said early on in the video about this movie being boring, there is long stretches of seemingly feeling like nothing is fucking happening. And I'm getting at the parts in the maze because we have to keep shifting to character, and there's points of the film where we'll see something happen to a character and we're like, okay, well, it's going somewhere, and then it shifts from them and goes to another fucking character where we have to do this all over again. And then once we get caught up to speed with what's currently going on, there is very little fun to be had there because it's pretty much torture porn bullshit. Well, I get that torture porn is kind of some people's speed. It's minus the stuff dealing with the skin. None of this shit really impressed me. It was just, it just felt like the movie was just humming along. And let me tell you the runtime of this movie here. It's 79 minutes. It's a very short movie. It's barely an hour, over an hour, give or take 20 minutes, right? The opening title sequence at least takes up probably 3 to 5 minutes of that, and then the end credits probably take up a few minutes. So barely over an hour, and this movie feels like it's over an hour and a half long. It's just it for a short movie, and you can't tell the pace is going by quickly. That's a sad thing, and yeah, I hold that really against this movie. And I'm gonna say this up front, while the characters, I guess, are written on purpose not to be likable, I feel like, in terms of the characters, going back to that negative, right, there needed to be way more done with them. And this goes back to the writing, but I'm talking about just the plot. I mean, the plot is just, it feels like this could have been like a 20-minute YouTube video, like an adaptation of a creepypasta, and you just get to the good stuff, and that's all you need to showcase. That would have been fine. But the characters have really nothing to work with in this movie because they're separated from each other, and the only time they're kind of entertaining is when they're with each other. So when you remove that element from the movie, it gets dry. You need something else there to help liven it up, right? And honestly, getting down to how the film is shot, I haven't mentioned the camera work. I did bring up the editing. It just feels fucking amateurish, but there are some scenes where you cannot fucking see what's going on in the corn maze. Some bad lighting here and there. I don't know if that was done on purpose or that was the budget. This is from Indican Pictures. I've never heard what the fuck this label is. But given the trailer that played in the beginning of this DVD for another movie that they made, good God almighty, that shit looked way lower budget than this film did. But yeah, there's some, cheap music in here as well. Some generic cliche plot points also that you come to expect with these type of movies. It does not reinvent the wheel like some people have claimed it did back in the day when this came out. I don't know if that was, COVID pandemic hype building up these straight to streaming movies or what, but I just don't see it. Honestly, I'm genuinely, like I said earlier, I'm genuinely perplexed how the fuck this movie spawned a sequel. I mean, I get it. Story kind of wields it near the end where it starts to get good. But everything else was just a wash for me. I came out, though, not thinking that this film was terrible, but I thought it was just kind of meh. I was just not really all that impressed with it. So from a 0 to 5 star basis, I'd probably give this movie like a 2.25 out of 5 stars, which is a higher end of meh. Not quite okay for me. Because it doesn't get good until like the final 20 to 25 minutes. And even then, it's only good because of the twist. And maybe some mild jokes in the atmosphere it has going for it. But yeah, there's nothing really remarkable here that you haven't seen done before. The directing ability isn't all that good. No offense to Dante Yor, but maybe it gets better in PHarm 2. I don't know if you directed that one, but it just didn't impress me all that much. And sadly, that's how I feel about this indie horror film here. But I'm sure some people out there that are probably interested in this film, obviously, if you clicked on this, you probably are here to hear about it, or maybe you've seen it before. You might love it more than I did. You might hate it more than I did. Maybe you think I'm being too fair or too harsh. Whatever the case may be, you know, I get it, but it's just not for me. So yeah, that's my thoughts on PHarm with a PH. Let me know down in the comment section if you've seen this movie before. Do you love this? Do you hate this? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.